Tessa Ramirez had always believed that small dreams, when nurtured with passion, could bloom into something extraordinary. After years of working double shifts in downtown cafes and baking through the night for catering gigs, she had finally managed to save enough to start her own business. Her vision wasn't extravagant. It was intimate, thoughtful, and fueled by community spirit. She wanted to open a mobile cafe, a retro-styled coffee and pastry truck that would bring fresh espresso, warm croissants, and smiles to sleepy neighborhoods during early mornings. She called it Sunrise Grind, and it was painted a soft pastel, blue with hand-lettered signage, floral decals, and brass details that gave it a charming vintage vibe. It looked like something plucked from a Pinterest board, and Tessa took pride in every detail. From the espresso machine to the warm cinnamon buns, everything had her touch. The first place she wanted to park was just outside her own HOA-governed neighborhood in Fairgrove Pines, a seemingly quiet, upper-middle-class community filled with pristine lawns, white fences, and neighbors who pretended to wave but rarely smiled with their eyes. She wasn't technically parking within the community itself. She had scouted a small public stretch of road right on the edge of the neighborhood, next to a jogging path and near the kids' bus stop. Perfect location. Safe, public, and bustling between 6:30 and 8 a.m. Tessa had her permits, her food, license, her city vendor ID, all official, all legal. She was proud. Nervous, yes, but mostly proud. Her launch day was crisp and golden, with the early June sun slicing through a few lazy clouds. She arrived at 6 a.m. to set up, the smell of fresh beans and vanilla wafting into the air. A few neighbors trickled over with curious smiles. The first to arrive was an older gentleman walking his Labrador. He bought a black coffee and a banana muffin. "This is a great idea," he said, tipping his to-go cup toward her with a grin. "Lord knows this neighborhood needs a little soul." Tessa's heart soared. People wanted this. The next few minutes passed in a blur. A line started to form. Parents walking kids to the bus stop stopped by for lattes. Runners grabbed protein smoothies. Teens bought cinnamon knots on their way to the high school shuttle. But just as she was steaming milk for a double-shot caramel latte, a sharp voice cut through the background hum. "Excuse me, what exactly is going on here?" Tessa looked up to see a woman storming toward the truck. She was around 60, stiff posture, short silver hair curled perfectly, and wore a beige cardigan so starched it could stand on its own. Her face was twisted into a grimace, and she looked directly at the small crowd around the truck with disapproval. "Morning," Tessa called brightly. "We're open for business. Can I help you with something?" The woman ignored the pleasantry and stepped closer to the service window, peering inside like she was inspecting a crime scene. "I'm looking for the owner," she said, voice clipped. "I need to speak to whoever's in charge." "You're looking at her," Tessa said, still smiling but now wary. "My name's Tessa. I own the truck." The woman blinked. "You?" "Yes, ma'am," she scoffed. "You're the owner of a commercial food truck operating here?" Tessa nodded. "All my paperwork's in order. I'm not on private property, and I'm fully licensed by the city. Would you like to see the permit?" "That won't be necessary," the woman snapped, clearly rattled. "I'm Marlene, president of the Fairgrove Pines HOA, and this—" She gestured broadly to the crowd, the parked truck, and the pastry display. "Is not going to fly." Tessa's stomach twisted slightly, but she kept her voice calm. "Well, I'm not on HOA property. This is a public road, and I've done my due diligence. I'm not breaking any rules." "Perhaps not city rules," Marlene said, a smirk playing on her lips. "But you're creating a disturbance in our community. This is a residential neighborhood, not a commercial zone. We have standards." "I understand that," Tessa said. "But again, I'm not on HOA-controlled property. I've checked with the city." Marlene leaned in slightly, lowering her voice. "Let me put this plainly, dear. This isn't the type of business we want to attract here. It sets a tone, a low one. Food trucks are messy, noisy, and frankly, this is not the kind of operation a woman like you should be running out in public. Tessa blinked. A woman like me? You know what I mean, Marlene huffed. This looks unprofessional. Standing around in an apron serving pastries from a van. It's not ladylike. It's not respectable. There it was. Not just about zoning, not about traffic. It was personal. Prejudice, subtle and poisonous, baked into every word. Tessa took a breath. I appreciate your opinion, Marlene, but I've worked hard for this business. I'm not breaking any laws. I'm not on your private streets, and the community seems to like what I'm offering. Marlene straightened, nostrils flaring. Then prepare to receive a formal notice. We'll be reporting this to the HOA board and the county. I suggest you don't return tomorrow. We have lawyers, you know. With that, she spun on her heels and stalked off, muttering something about property values. The small crowd that had gathered looked uncomfortable. A few neighbors tried to offer polite smiles, and one man muttered, "Don't mind her. She tried to get my kid's lemonade stand shut down last summer." Tessa swallowed the lump in her throat. The joy of her first day had been punctured but not defeated. She looked down at her espresso machine, took a breath, and pulled another shot. One rude HOA president wasn't going to undo years of sweat and sacrifice. She was still open for business. By 8 odd a.m., she had sold out of pastries. A dozen people had followed her on Instagram. 2 teachers from the local middle school asked her to cater their next PTA event. Kids waved as they walked by. One elderly woman slipped her a $10 tip and said, "Don't let that sourpuss scare you off. We need you here." And Tessa knew right then, Marlene had picked the wrong woman to intimidate. The HOA meeting was scheduled for Thursday evening at 6 p.m., held in the small community clubhouse nestled between the tennis courts and the pool. It was a room built for polite discussion and mild disagreements, block party budgets, landscaping rules, and maybe the occasional barking dog complaint. But that night, as Tessa walked through the double doors holding a manila folder full of documentation, the room pulsed with quiet tension. She felt it immediately, eyes following her, whispers darting like minnows. She recognized some of the faces, parents who'd bought her coffee that very week, couples who lived on her street, a few retirees from morning dog walks. And then there was Marlene, seated at the center of the head table like a queen at court, flanked by 2 stone-faced board members who were clearly her loyal knights. Tessa took a seat near the front, setting her folder on her lap. She didn't feel confident, but she felt ready. The meeting began with mundane items, pool maintenance delays, lawn care complaints, and an update on mailbox vandalism. Then came the real reason Tessa had come, the unauthorized commercial activity near community perimeter. Marlene leaned into her microphone with the satisfaction of someone who had waited all week to say her piece. As you're all aware, Marlene began, her voice smooth but tinged with self-importance, there has recently been a commercial food truck, painted in garish colors, parked just outside our HOA boundary on several weekday mornings. While technically on a public road, this vehicle clearly targets our residents and creates noise, congestion, and safety concerns near the school bus pickup point. Additionally, it has raised complaints from several homeowners regarding propriety and standards. Tessa bit her tongue. She wanted to shout that no one had complained, at least not truthfully, but she waited. She needed to stay composed. Furthermore, Marlene continued, this business is operated by a single individual, without oversight, staff, or regulation beyond a flimsy city permit. We must ask ourselves, do we want to encourage this kind of informal, unstable presence right outside our neighborhood? There were murmurs in the room. Some people nodded. Others looked confused or unsure. One woman in the back raised her hand. My son buys a muffin there before school. It's actually really convenient. Marlene's eyes flicked over with thinly veiled annoyance. I understand, Dana. But this is about more than convenience. It's about precedent. That was Tessa's cue. She stood. I'd like to speak if I may, she said, her voice clear, though her heart pounded. Marlene blinked, then gestured toward the floor mic. Fine, briefly. Tessa moved forward and opened her folder. My name is Tessa Ramirez. I'm the owner and operator of Sunrise Grind, the coffee truck Marlene is referring to. I live on Oak Ridge Lane, so I'm a resident of Fairgrove Pines. My business is fully licensed by the city and the county. I have my food safety certification, insurance, and I passed a health inspection 2 weeks ago. I'm not operating within HOA property. I'm parked legally on a public access road, and I serve customers who choose to come to me. She held up a laminated copy of her permit. Everything I'm doing is above board. Marlene crossed her arms. We're aware of the paperwork, but your presence still affects our community. How? Tessa asked genuinely. Because neighbors enjoy the service? Because parents can grab coffee while walking their kids to the bus? Or is it because I'm a woman running a business that doesn't fit your idea of what's appropriate? A few people in the crowd shifted. Someone coughed. Marlene's mouth tightened into a line. Let's not make this about gender, Marlene snapped. But it is, Tessa said. You told me it wasn't professional for someone like me to run a truck. You said it wasn't ladylike. What does that have to do with zoning or traffic flow? One of the board members leaned forward, clearing his throat. Ms. Ramirez, perhaps the issue is that your business invites outside foot traffic. That could eventually cause litter or loitering. Tessa nodded, anticipating that. Actually, I bring my own trash bins, and I clean the area every day. No one's loitering. People come, they grab coffee, and they go, just like at a Starbucks drive-thru, only friendlier. Another hand went up. It was a man in a baseball cap, seated near the back. I don't see what the big deal is. I've bought coffee there every day this week. She's not bothering anyone. More nods followed. A young mom added, My daughter loves her hot chocolate. It's better than dragging her through a fast food line before school. Still, Marlene wasn't letting go. We're not debating taste. We're debating precedent. If we allow this, what's next? Ice cream trucks every afternoon? T-shirt vendors? People selling tamales out of coolers? The HOA must protect its character. Tessa raised an eyebrow. So what you're really saying is, you want to control who's allowed to succeed. If I were a man in a pressed uniform with a corporate logo, would you be trying to shut me down? Or is it because I'm one person, doing something different on her own? A silence settled over the room. The type of silence that comes when truth slices through polished lies. I'm not asking to park in your driveway, she continued. I'm not violating any noise ordinance. I'm not blocking traffic. I've got community support, and I'm offering something people clearly enjoy. You don't have to like it, but you can't shut me down just because it makes you uncomfortable. Marlene's face was red now, but she said nothing. Then a man stood. Gray hair, glasses, calm demeanor. I used to work in city planning, he said. The road she's parking on is legally zoned for temporary commercial activity. That includes food trucks with permits. This HOA can't override that unless she's on private HOA-owned land, which she's not. Tessa exhaled slowly. The board member next to Marlene whispered something to her. She didn't respond, just stared straight ahead. It was clear this hadn't gone the way she'd planned. I propose, the man in glasses continued, that instead of attacking a resident entrepreneur, we offer support. Maybe even set boundaries, hours of operation, days, whatever feels balanced. But banning her outright, that's not legal. And frankly, it's not neighborly. There was a round of light applause. Marlene didn't clap. Instead, she picked up her pen and scribbled something furiously in her notebook. Tessa sat back down, heart still hammering but adrenaline giving way to relief. She didn't win the room over completely, but she had made her point, and she had planted doubt in Marlene's armor of authority. The meeting adjourned shortly after. As people filed out, several stopped by her chair to offer kind words. "You were amazing," one woman whispered. "You handled that with class," a man added. "My teenage daughter wants to start a small jewelry business," someone said. "You're inspiring." Tessa thanked each of them. As she stepped into the cool night air, stars blinking in the sky above the clubhouse, she felt something shift inside her. Not just pride, but purpose. This wasn't just about coffee anymore. It was about standing tall in the face of pettiness and prejudice. She looked over her shoulder one last time. Marlene was still inside, talking to one of her board members. Tessa gave a quiet laugh and walked to her car. She'd be parking the truck tomorrow, right where it belonged. The next morning, before the sun had even peeked over the rooftops of Fairgrove Pines, Tessa was already behind the wheel of Sunrise Grind. The early hours didn't feel quite so heavy anymore. Her coffee truck, usually humming to life in silence, now roared with renewed defiance. She had spent the night replaying every second of the HOA meeting in her mind, every word she had said and every look Marlene had thrown her way. But instead of doubt, all it left behind was determination. She wasn't just a vendor anymore, she was a symbol, whether she wanted to be or not, of standing your ground when others tried to erase you. She parked the truck in the same spot she had chosen from the beginning, a stretch of public curb that, while adjacent to the HOA community, legally belonged to the city. She triple-checked the signage. No parking violations, no time restrictions, nothing Marlene or her cronies could twist into a rule she was breaking. And this time, she had something extra. 3 laminated copies of her vendor license taped inside the truck's service window, clearly visible to anyone who might come sniffing around. The sun began to rise in a warm peach gradient, casting golden light on the familiar tree-lined sidewalk and the empty driveways behind it. By 6:30 a.m., the first customer had arrived. It was the older gentleman with the Labrador again. "Still standing," he said with a wink. "Still brewing," Tessa replied, handing him his usual black coffee. More followed. Students, parents, joggers, even a city sanitation worker who had heard about her from a co-worker. They came with smiles, waving to each other in the line, some already chatting like it had become their morning ritual. And in a way, it had. In just a few days, Tessa's truck had become more than a place to grab caffeine. It was becoming a small social hub, a tiny corner of warmth and community in a neighborhood that usually kept to itself. At exactly 7:02 a.m., as she handed a caramel latte to a woman pushing a stroller, Tessa saw her, Marlene, standing on her porch across the street in a beige house that looked as rigid and cold as her demeanor. She wore the same expression Tessa had seen at the HOA meeting, tight-lipped, arms crossed, eyes narrowed like she was watching a building collapse. And yet, Tessa didn't flinch. She smiled and waved. Marlene did not wave back. Instead, she disappeared into her house. By 7:30, a black SUV rolled up and parked behind Tessa's truck. A man stepped out, wearing a blazer and holding a clipboard. He looked around, inspected the sidewalk, the street, the curb, and then walked over to the order window. "Morning," he said with a nod. "Morning," Tessa replied, cautious. "You here for a drink or a problem?" He chuckled. "Neither. I'm from the city zoning department. Got a call from someone claiming you were operating without authorization. I pulled up your vendor registration before I came. Looks solid. To me. Just need to verify you're not on HOA land." Tessa stepped out from behind the counter, pointing to the curb. "Here's the property map. You can see this sidewalk and street are city-maintained, not HOA jurisdiction." The inspector reviewed the documents and smiled. "You've done your homework. Everything looks good. Just keep the area clean. No amplified music and you're fine." "Always do," Tessa said. "Thanks for stopping by." He handed her a business card. Let me know if they give you more trouble. You're covered." As he drove away, Tessa caught sight of Marlene. Again, this time, she was at her upstairs window, a pair of binoculars in hand like a suburban spy. Tessa laughed under her breath. Petty surveillance wasn't going to stop her. By 8 a.m., the line stretched down the sidewalk, and 2 local high school students had offered to help out part-time before class. Tessa scribbled their numbers on a sticky note. Maybe it was time to hire help. Her vision for Sunrise Grind was expanding by the day, and not because of profit. It was because of people. The way this little truck had opened up conversation between neighbors who previously never made eye contact. The way children smiled when she remembered their favorite donut. The way someone told her, "You make this place feel more human." Later that afternoon, Tessa returned home to find an envelope taped to her front door. It wasn't mailed, it wasn't stamped. It was hand-delivered and aggressive in its placement, centered and taped with 2 strips like a scarlet letter. She opened it and scanned the document. It was a formal notice from the HOA demanding that she cease all promotional signage and foot traffic targeting HOA residents, citing a vague clause about nuisance commerce. It was filled with legal-sounding language, but absolutely no teeth. Still, the message was clear. Marlene wasn't done. And now she was trying to intimidate her at home. Tessa took a photo of the letter and sent it to the city's business services department, asking if there was any merit to the complaint. She received a reply within an hour. "Not enforceable under city law. HOA cannot dictate public commerce beyond their physical property." She wanted to ignore the letter, toss it into the trash, and move on. But something about it stuck with her. Not just the pettiness, but the persistence. Marlene wasn't just trying to get her shut down. She was trying to punish her for not falling in line. So Tessa did something she hadn't done before. She went online. She created a TikTok account and posted a short video showing her pastel blue truck, her menu, and the permit in the window. She narrated her story, not with bitterness, but with strength. "Hi, I'm Tessa. I run this little coffee truck on a public street outside a gated community. Most people love it, but one HOA president says a woman like me shouldn't run a business like this. She's tried to shut me down with false complaints, legal threats, and intimidation tactics. I'm not going anywhere, and I hope this inspires someone else to chase their dream no matter who tries to stop you." She posted it and closed the app, unsure what would come of it. By the next morning, the video had 40,000 views. Comments flooded in. "You're a boss. Tell HOA Karen to sit down. This is the kind of energy we need in every neighborhood." Local influencers reposted it. A small business organization reached out offering legal guidance if needed. Even a food truck review page added her location to their directory. That day, when she parked the truck again, there were nearly double the customers. One even brought flowers. A teacher gave her a handwritten thank you note. Someone taped a sign to her truck that said, "This is what community looks like." Marlene came out again as expected. This time, she tried to shout across the street that Tessa was violating decorum. Tessa, wiping espresso foam from a lid, didn't even look over. She held up her phone, pressed record, and said, "Say that again for my followers." Marlene turned and stomped back inside. Tessa grinned. By noon, she had an invitation to speak at a women's entrepreneurship meetup. By night, her TikTok had hit over 150,000 views. She hadn't asked to become a symbol of resistance. She had only wanted to serve coffee and pastries with heart. But now she was both. And as she prepped her croissant dough for the next day, flour on her cheek and jazz humming from her Bluetooth speaker, Tessa felt invincible. The truck would be there tomorrow. So would she.